We continue our work in Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Our next topic today is the way of Ukraine to managing waste in European way. Our speakers are Tatyana Tevkun. We're giving her the floor. Good afternoon. I'm glad to greet you here. I'm very thankful to our speakers for coming and to the participants of this roundtable discussion. Our topic is the way to European management, European methods of waste management. First, we would like to present the sociological research findings, which is a recent one, and we would like to demonstrate you our analysis of the public attitudes to the waste management problem. I'm giving the floor to Mr. Maxim. Good morning. This research, at least a part of it, was focused on the attitudes to waste management among the public. It was by several aspects, divided by several aspects, such as general attitudes and also waste incineration and polyethylene packaging and general assessment of the efforts of local authorities in addressing the problem of waste management. First, the general attitude. Here we can say that the public, on the one hand, believe that this is an important problem and this is the major attitude among the public, and this problem should be addressed as our public think. Majority of people think that it is important problem, and also the public accented that the local authorities should address the handling of waste when election campaign is ongoing, and this topic also should be raised at different debates at the local level, and the overwhelming majority of the public say that they know, they are aware of the dangerous effects of mismanagement of waste, but the majority at the same time do not act to reduce the harm from waste. But respondents also give such response because they do not sort the waste, although they are ready to sort it, but they do not sort the waste because there are no special containers for separate handling of waste, and most of people do not find where to where the accumulators could be disposed of. At the same time, they are ready to sort the waste by 3 or 4 parts, and also to waste in batteries and separate bins if there are such containers in their yards available. At the same time, we should say that the public declares they are ready to stop using polyethylene packaging, and our public demonstrate that they are aware of the hazard and they are ready, and if there is any alternative to polyethylene packaging at the same time. What is of interest that when the issue of material support of such action is addressed here, the public is not so active when we ask how to budget this via tariffs. Many people say that the citizens should not pay or should pay only a small part. Their expenses could be raised only by 10–20% maximum of those amounts spent today. The situation is two-sided. Mostly the hazard of this weight is aware of by the public. The public is ready to handle the waste adequately, to take actions to improve the situation, but they do not want to pay for this. They suppose that this should be done by someone else. This financial maintenance should be provided by someone else, and taken into account talking about the issue of local authorities' actions. This is just local authorities who are supposed to be the financing institutions. And most of the public think that the local authorities do very little or do nothing. Thank you, Mr. Maxim. I'd like also to express my opinion. We also have analyzed this issue, and we also made infographics which will be posted in social media. One of the issues is that people say that they are not ready to pay for waste management, but most of people, they even are not aware of how much they pay. And also in mass media there is some manipulative information that the waste is very big resource, valuable materials, and if waste are separately collected, they should not be paid for. We should carry out more awareness campaigns so that people understand what for they should pay. Anyway, local authorities will suffer because they are required to resolve the problem. On the other hand, they are also they also can't say how much it costs. Yes, this is so, and if we focus on the awareness campaign, yes, we should accent not the hazards, because they are well aware. The public is well aware of the hazards, but where to go with this problem, this should be in focus. Our awareness campaigns should be focused on that people will not pay much for this. The second issue of our roundtable discussion is the green tariff launching for energy installations generating energy from waste. This issue has been discussed for 3 years, and tomorrow the draft law will be on the agenda in the Verkhovna Rada, and we invited MPs, but they are not now here. We want them to take part in our discussion today. Maybe they will come a little bit later. There are 3 components in this green tariff: energy, economic, and social. How to do so that it continue working, continue operating, whether this green tariff should be launched, how this is consistent with the EU directives. I would like to speak about the environmental aspect. It is very important. I will be talking about waste incineration because it is now most debated. They should be of the 7th or 8th generations like in Europe, not the 1st or 2nd generation, some just scrap metal which would be the way themselves. In Europe, the waste incineration directive was in operation. Now in force there is another directive in Europe. When we visit other countries, we ask why you monitor this or that indicator. We hear the response, the legislation demands from us monitoring of this indicator. So what is the first? What should be the first, legislation or launch of the tariff? Talking about the framework waste directive, the principle, it sets forth the principle: the contaminator pays. How he should pay for the disposal of the waste when this would be introduced via green tariffs without whether it would work qualitatively. This principle, basic principle. Good afternoon. Talking about Kiev, most of pay amount is calculated by square meters. We mean heating, but not only households produce waste. Also, restaurants produce solid domestic waste, and it will be so that they will pay very small amounts for waste incineration, and the rest of our households will pay for them. For example, rural population produce not so much waste. I would like to give the floor to Francois Moret, the manager of head of the European Union delegation to Ukraine.
This is the translation. I'm only in charge of waste management, energy, and civil protection at the EU delegation to Ukraine. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation, and I'm glad to say a few words on behalf of the EU delegation. I want first of all to thank the organizers, the EPL and the Reanimation package of reforms for organizing this event. I and we believe it is very timely. At least for 2 reasons. The first one is the study that Maxime just mentioned, and we are all, I think, happy, and we should be glad that society is requesting the change to move to more European values and practices in terms of waste management. You have mentioned, Maxime, quite a few important issues, and you touched the issue in particular of the dangerous waste, and for instance the waste of electronic equipment. I want to mention that we implement a twinning project with the Ministry of Development, and I would like to recall that the philosophy behind the collection and recycling of this waste is that the producer and the retailer, the entity that puts on the market, future waste of this kind of stream, will have, as in the EU and will have in Ukraine, the duty to collect and recycle it. So it's not exactly for the local authorities to organize the recycling of this kind of waste. It is for the companies putting this future waste on the market to collect and recycle them, and they are free to organize themselves within a certain frame to be defined by law, and we're working on that. And I'm sure Maxim Barinov, sitting on the right here, will comment on that later today. I said it is timely as well because, of course, of the adoption of the strategy on waste earlier in, well, it's actually about a month ago, on the 8th of November. We welcome that very much, the EU. We believe it's a very sound frame to reform really waste governance in Ukraine. We were involved in the preparation, and we again welcome this adoption. Now, it's a frame. It's a strategy. It doesn't say how Ukraine and the EU will together implement this strategy in Ukraine. So in that context, it's as well very good. We have this kind of event today and debates in the Rada tomorrow, in the weeks, in the months to come, to define what is best for Ukraine to implement strategy with the end objective to decrease the impact on the environment and on people. I will not comment on the negative impact of all kind of waste on health of people, but it's obvious that we have interest to deal with waste in Ukraine in a much better way than now. So it is in that context important not to hurry to another situation. We are speaking about systematic changes that need to be systematically analyzed, and decisions need to be taken step by step. This issue of green tariffs, I understand, is in the pipeline for quite a few months, and actually was proposed in the Rada before the strategy, waste strategy was, I understand, adopted. And while the EU is not really supporting that, and to be actually even more clear, does not support green tariffs for waste incineration. Why is that? The philosophy of waste governance in the EU and in most countries of the world is based on this inverted pyramid that you all know, that foresees that we should first avoid producing waste, then as much as possible reuse, recycle, and only at the bottom of the pyramid we have incineration for the parts that cannot be reused or recycled, and then come, of course, landfilling. Of course, it is better to incinerate than landfilling. We all agree with that. It is better, of course, to recuperate energy from incineration than not recuperate in incineration. But applying green tariffs to incineration might have, and would certainly have, an effect contrary to what is expected. We would actually encourage incineration, which is not something we should do. This is in short the philosophy and why we believe it is not appropriate. And of course, green tariff was designed for renewable energies, green energies, and by definition waste is not renewable energy. This is our position. I'm happy to comment with more details and stand, of course, ready to consider any new project discussions. I mean, we EU stand ready to support Ukraine in implementing strategy. Thank you very much.
Дякую, Jean-Francois.
Thank you, Mr. Jean-Francois. The national strategy of waste management has been recently adopted. We have been waiting for its adoption for 1 year and a half. We do not have the Ministry of Environment representative today here, but this ministry were supposed to tell us today about the regulatory acts and the strategy. The strategy does not say about additional incentives to energy installations, energy plants, this law, they should have been subject to expert assessment of Ministry of Ecology. Now Mr. Dombrovsky has come to us. He is one of the first authors of this draft law, and we would like to hear his opinion. First, about the economic substantiation, why this amount of tariff has been set, and whether it would resolve the waste management problem, or in your opinion whether it is consistent to the strategy and to the directives of the EU.
Thank you for this invitation, but taking into account that I was late, so I would like to say several words now, and then at the end to have opportunity to provide my arguments, to provide response to the speeches that we will have. So, dear colleagues, look, 26 years of independence of Ukraine and colossal global ecological problem in Ukraine. And during this period, we didn't create any instrument, any processing of waste in order to resolve this problem. There are political, ecological discussions, but the wastes are accumulated in Ukraine. And according to estimates of experts, as of today, we have 1.5 billion cubic meters of wastes, and they are not utilized in Ukraine. And I cannot be responsible for this assessment, but the information I have that now waste dumps, they hold the territory in Ukraine that can be compared with the territory of neighboring Moldova. And we live in this catastrophe, and our grandchildren also will live in this catastrophe, and Ukraine won't flourish. It will be just waste dump country. And I'm completely against any political insinuations. And I believe that we should find the right instruments how to resolve this problem. In order to find correct decision, we should go back to technological experience of the EU countries and the United States of America, Japan, China experience, who develop now renewable energy. And we see in the world that the wastes are transformed into energy resources, and this is the main direction that works in the world. You can take experience of any country. Unfortunately, I cannot put it on screen, but I would like to show several slides. This is statistics of the countries of the EU. So, green color, these are those countries that bury waste, and yellow is when they incinerate waste. So the matter is not green tariff, the matter is technology, whether we use the technology for incineration or we do not use technology for incineration. If we don't use it, so we should propose another alternative. As a country that signed the association agreement with the European Union, and I, as a People's Deputy, who did a lot in order that our legislation meet the European directives requirements, and I fully support the representative of the European Union delegation. These technologies are used in the countries of the European Union. You can go to Vienna, and in the center of the town there is a Spitalau incineration plant that incinerate waste and produce energy, heat, and in summer it produces called. And you can go to Bratislava, and there they incinerate wastes, and I believe that our Ukrainian philosophy should correspond to the directives of the European Union, and to meet the hierarchy of waste handling, so there should be preliminary sorting and secondary use of materials. But after this, we have a lot of waste. No one knows what to do with. And a month ago, I went to Turkey, and there they built a modern plant, waste processing plant. So 1,200, 1,500 tons, and they have 150 or 180 kilometers, so they didn't invent anything new. They, like in Vienna, they, like in Bratislava, if you want to see sorting the waste in Vienna, I can show you a video, and there is separation in two groups, organics and non-organic. For organic group of waste, there is only one technology. This is biogasification, and whether it will be solid or liquid fermentation, but this is transformation of organics into biogas. That is 22 times more aggressive than CO2 emissions we fight against. And according to the directive of the European Union, should be burned in cogeneration blocks, and to produce electricity, and also to produce heat that we should use. And another part, non-organic part, it is separated, and it is they grind it, and Sweden and Austria and Switzerland, they use different technologies of incineration. And the production of pyrolysis gas with further incineration, and also cogeneration. So this is the choice of technology of processing of wastes. I can show one interesting slide to you. You know that China became the leader in investment into green energy, and I can show you what changed in 10 years in China. So this is 2006. This is processing of waste in different regions of China. So blue is burying of waste, and yellow is incineration. And now you can see what happened in 2015. So they have 1.5 billion of population, and for them, this problem of waste processing is much bigger than for Ukraine. So the technology of incineration should meet European requirements, those that are used in the European Union, and this technology can be used in Ukraine if it meets all ecology norms. And this is my answer to the question whether to incinerate or not to incinerate. And now we are going to speak about green tariff. Why this green tariff is. So we do not have efficiently working technology in Ukraine, in any region, in any center. Even we don't have it even in Kiev. So we do not have any modern plant, at least a small one. So, so there is no economy of this business. and the level of who will pay for utilization of wastes. So $10 or $8 for transporting this waste, and in Europe this is about 120 euros, and we cannot put this problem on the shoulders of our citizens, because now there is increase of gas prices, electricity prices were raised, and also there is second option. Who is one of contaminators? If we try to analyze the situation, we will see a lot of packages on forests, in the fields, different types of packages that can be used. And unfortunately, we do not know how to do it, and it has a multi-component structure. And in the package of this draft law, it is envisaged, not this one, but in the package, that there should be a tax on a package. And here there are debates, and we know that this is additional tax to some area of economic activity. So maybe we shouldn't provide such tax. Maybe we should have everything like we have today. We cannot tax citizens. We cannot tax producers of package. So how can we pay for this? So we have a law on alternative energy. We have a tariff for green energy. So we have two positions. One is production of biogas from biomass and incineration of biomass. And here and there we have green tariff. And if you think that investors are queuing in order to invest green energy projects in production of biogas and incinerating of biogas, you are deeply wrong, because we have queue in the solar energy, and the tariff is 3 or 4 times higher than in European countries, and we have 30 megawatts or 35 megawatt on the whole. These are the projects implemented in biogas, and what we propose is the same, that this organic tail of waste, that we were able to gasify it, to produce gas from it, and to incinerate it in the modern plants, and to create clean electric energy and heat, and to provide this energy to population. When we incinerate in cogeneration and we produce electricity and heat, and 51% is the generation of heat. And I do not insist that we should have only green tariff. Listen, if countries of the European Union, if they deal with this problem for 50, 70 years, and we still do not have any efficient solution. So this is true, Alexander. Thank you very much. First, what I want to say is that our organization, Ecology, Law, Human, so we do not say whether incineration is needed or not. We know that it is needed, but how to introduce it in order that it was ecologically safe, because now we have a problem with the small hydroelectric stations, and these stations are so that they do not meet ecology standards. And tell us, please, do we have ecology problems with the use of coal? And it generates 35% of electrical energy in Ukraine. So the countries of EU, they made a big step ahead, but for this, and we believe that the Ministry of Ecology, they should prepare one quality draft law. No, these are political declarations. We need solutions. We need model projects to resolve problems in Ukraine. And I say this as an engineer, as a person who designed and built, who worked as a city head in Vinnytsia, who worked as a state administration head, and from morning till evening we faced this problem with waste utilization, and today we do not have a model that we would be able to propose to any region. And sorry if I say it so sharply, but the problem you say about small hydro stations, but this is the problem of design and construction. This is not the problem of the area on the whole. We have problems of big hydro generation. We face these problems, but we should find solutions. Of course, but and you would like to say to me that in the center of Vienna, in the residential quarters, they can use this technology that is ecologically safe, and here in Kiev, we also can build such a plant that would meet European criteria. So I would like to give the floor to other speakers, but we believe that we should have plants of 7th and 8th generation, like in Europe. What should we do? How to create proper legislation? And this is the purpose of this round table. I would like to give the floor to Oleh Kostrykin, the representative of State Commission that supervises the housing and heating department. So I would like to say that today's meeting on green tariff for incineration of waste, this is a problem. So incineration in Ukraine is prohibited by law, and here they speak about the draft law, and they do not say that green tariff should be provided. The law 4835D doesn't provide it. We have 3 different directions, and all these directions, there is a thermochemical, chemical, and biological direction. And draft law 4835 covers the technologies that the energy can be used and transformed into electric energy, and
European hierarchy of handling waste, it would be, I do not understand why the issue is set like this in this formulation, this articulation, this wording. Let's start with the presentation we see here, pay for waste. How much citizens are ready to contribute to waste handling. The Commission has already started addressing the issue of waste markets. I would like to comment on this. Today, payment for handling or landfilling of domestic waste, for example, landfilling, it costs 2.5 kopecks by public. As a representative of economic regulator, landfilling is an economic competitor of incineration and recycling of waste. Whether there is sense for 2 hryvnias 51 kopecks, the cost of landfilling is 70 kopecks, 75 kopecks. Economic model in Ukraine for landfills establishment as facilities or waste incineration. There are no promotion for both in Ukraine because the cost is 3.5 euros. This this would not ensure payback of investment. Talking about the European practices, Poland has built 6 waste-to-energy plants, for example in Krakow. In 2005, 2006, there were plants built and 10 incinerators with different incineration technologies are on the plans. In Krakow, they suppose to get waste for 140 zloty. And in Ukraine, the competitive market is this 140 zloty plant should compete with 75 hryvnia plant. So it would not be competitive then. And where then the waste will be brought to the landfill, which is cheaper, or to the incinerator, which is more expensive? Of course, it is obvious that everything will end at the landfill then. Where this landfill for 75 hryvnias per ton. We have 32 licensees with which we are working, economically regulating them. 32 licensees, out of them no one meet the requirements. Several licensees are almost consistent with the requirements. The rest of landfills, they do not meet requirements at all. Those requirements which are set by the legislation, they are just filling of landfilling of waste without collecting filtered waters at all. So all waste management in Ukraine it consists in just removing from the yards of whole household of this waste, and where this waste gets, what is the destination, this does not interesting for anyone. This is the problem of only those who live there. So I'd like to say, whether we want or not, the Commission is also for sorting of domestic waste and introduction of separate collection of waste, and also the statistical data of this separate collection should be collected. This is our real life, but creation of sorting system of separate collection of waste, it does not exclude the system of collection. The separate collection is only a part of it. In any case, some tails remain. Whether we can avoid waste to energy plants, no, we can't, because there are no such plants now in Europe. Finally, we do not say that that Ukraine needs them, but the question is, the issue is how to pay for their operation. Taxes could be used. Talking about European practices, tax on citizens, on households, included into utility bills. If our MPs will pass such laws, it would be like this. But in any case, citizens will pay. If it is not a tax burden, then it could be partially green tariff or some special tariff for electricity. We should understand the only one thing: if we create the system of waste handling, it is an integrated system, and for this system citizens now pay 60 kopecks as 56% are ready to increase the pay, so we add 60% for that is 26 kopecks. So the tariff would be 2.8, 2.9 hryvnia. This is what our citizens are ready to pay. And if we ask them if the system is like in Vienna, the same 56% will say that by 10% higher, and the system should be like in Vienna, nothing should be landfilled. So this issue is rather controversial. This is a question for debates. I have a question whether you have some information, for example, figures, how many waste to energy plants we need. We are talking about new generation plants such as in Vienna. How it will impact the electricity price, how much the price would be higher. Then the cabinet has adopted the strategy of domestic waste handling, and we support it in the part that 20 plants are on the plans, 19 or 20, approximately 20. But the locations where they will be built are not yet approved. So no districts are defined, and from which settlement the waste would be brought to those plants. But this is very positive fact that the strategy sets waste to energy plant building as a goal. We do not have licensees in our commission who may have submitted waste to energy. When we have licensees, we will tell you what will be the amount of increase in the pay. It will depend on the number of plants. Now there are no plants and no companies submit to our commission documents for producing electricity even from biological waste, for which the green tariff is in place already. So it is not time to discuss this. The green tariff for electricity generation from biological part of waste is in place. So the green, if we say that the green tariff is a panacea, this tariff is in place for several years and there is no project submitted so far to the commission, to the regulators. So the problem is not only in the green tariff but in the system in general. The green tariff is only one of the mechanisms of payback for investments. I have another question as to the landfills. We see the statistics that the citizens are not willing to pay increased prices, but we should include all costs of landfills into the tariffs, even for the operation for 30 years in future. Do your commission have some documents ready? Have you already worked on this issue? I would like to comment on the slide which is on the screen. Why the cost of landfilling is so low in Ukraine? Because our tariffs, for example, why we have 65 hryvnias for landfilling? Because the cost of ecological tax is from 0 to 2.5. Tariff on domestic waste, suppose salaries for landfill waste, and also diesel fuel also cost lower than in reality. The costs which are included, they are lower. So we are talking about actual amount of payment for landfilling of waste is due to the too low tariffs. Only 10% of our citizens, 56%, sorry, they are ready for increase of the tariff by 10%. And here I would like to say that in those tariffs which we have, the investment component is missing. What the investment component means? It is investment component means that we should make the landfill consistent with the requirements of standards. The landfill should the landfill management means monitoring overfiltrate and its processing. The salary, the diesel costs should be increased because they do not meet the real prices, market prices for. We are also talking that we can't avoid this increase. And what we see that we just think of bringing waste from households to landfills and nothing else is done, no actions, no further steps. So investment programs for landfills to be adopted, and they will stage by stage be brought to compliance with the requirements of the standards. So also landfills should have scales. This is a very simple step, but when we introduce the system of recording thanks to the introduction of scales, then we will have the figures how much waste we have. Let us not waste time for discussing the possibility of adoption of the strategy which would regulate social, political, financial aspects which are set forth in many regulatory acts submitted. The strategy, first of all, it is consistent with the hierarchy of waste handling, where incineration is in the basis of this pyramid. That is why we do not talk about the importance of this issue. Thermal processing or incineration is needed, but we have low tariffs both for landfilling and for incineration. We always are talking that the tariffs should be higher, but Japanese did the other way. They reduce generation of waste. They do not have so many organic wastes. They have packaging which is recyclable, or where it is feasible, it is incinerated. So the organizations which provide information support and which should address NGOs, so that they launch public awareness campaigns on reducing waste generation. Of course, the tariffs for landfilling should be higher. We should increase them. No country is capable of processing 100% of waste, but Japan has no landfills. They bring to landfills only the ash from incineration processes. Landfilling should be most expensive of all ways of waste disposal. This way, we will be promoting culture of consumption and development of recycling. And there is also a rhetorical issue: who will pay? If we adhere to the principle that the contaminator should pay, then everyone should pay according to the green tariff. So we put in investment component, and those who do not want to reduce generation of waste, these persons will pay. When electricity tariffs were raised in our country, we started to save electricity after that. Now we are much more efficient users of electricity than before. Previously, we used even to live with open windows in winter and so on. So maybe someone have questions among the audience.
Good afternoon, Olena Kravchenko. I have a question to the last speaker, Maxim Barinov. Tell us, please, as of today in Ukraine, there are more than 33 illegal landfills, and Ministry of Reservations, they are responsible for these landfills. And if we are speaking about a resolution of this problem, what you as an entity do in order to resolve this problem? Because you say that everyone is responsible, but we understand that the state and the system should provide oversight and to control these landfills. First of all, we should start from ourselves. Second, this is an entity of the Ministry of Ecology is responsible for landfills, and in the strategy it is envisaged to reduce landfills from 6,000 down to 300. So now this issue is discussed, and there should be inventory of these landfills, and in each region they will establish the maximum number of landfills for each oblast, and there will be a plan to close landfills and inventory and closure. This is expensive, but we should start this long way by making at least first step. So in order to reduce the number of landfills, we should build these incineration plants. Do you support proposals that are at the Supreme Council? And there is a package of draft laws that can provide for the reduction of these wastes. This is not correct question. What can be provided? Okay, what should be created in Ukraine in order to reduce waste and to reduce the number of illegal landfills? You say that everyone should be responsible. This is good, but world leaders, they cannot establish this responsibility of everyone. So the percentage of conscious people is too small in order to reduce the number of landfills. I understand. So this is a complex issue. First, this is the involvement of all sources of financing. Everyone who create waste, they should pay without resources. Any development of processing, of thermal processing, would be impossible. That's why broadening of responsibility, separate collection and development of processing and thermal processing, and the last is landfilling. So about whether the government create the plan of realization of the strategy and when the first draft appear. So I understand that in the nearest future a commission will be created at the level of vice premier concerning the plan of implementation. They will establish sources of financing stages, and then they will develop regional plans, more detailed plans for each oblast, and they will identify what processing, incineration plants, and also there will be sanitary measures for each settlement. Good afternoon, Evgeny Rybalchenko. Maxim, tell us, please, you said that who contaminate, they should pay. But who are those contaminators? Those who produce, those who create packages, or consumers? I would like to have an explanation in order to understand. So you said that the polluters should pay. So, in the majority of cases, the territories are polluted with packages. So, everyone should pay. So, we do not speak only about packages, but electronic and electrical equipment, and also batteries. After their life cycle is over, they should be processed. So, the consumer and producer both. So look, this cost should be put somewhere. So there should be money in order to process. So if there is no money, there is no industry. So who pays? So it should be consumers or producers. This is a differentiated issue. There are some flows and broadened responsibility for collection and transporting. So this is, and processing of paper is business of processing of plastics. So this is business, but it cannot be developed because all the income is consumed by transportation and collection. Processing of wastes. So business is when you can make money. For example, if we speak about automobile accumulators, they can be produced, but the processing of simple batteries, this is not business, and this processing of wastes of who pays? The producer of packages. So you can produce beer, for example. So at the end, consumer pays for everything. So the costs that you can pay 20 kopecks for battery, but if we throw this battery away and liquidate the consequences, we will pay 2 hryvnias. So we didn't envisage the issue of packages. We spoke about what we can do with those tails, those issues on the whole. So speaking about morphology, packages is about 25% of wastes, and there are a lot of other wastes that should be utilized. So there should be proper hierarchy, and that's why we discuss green tariff. So if we would include this package issue, it would take half a day to discuss, and it is bad that at the Supreme Council, they two businesses, they fight against each other, and we have only manipulations and wrong information that is provided. I disagree with you. Maybe this is your perception. Maybe you consider it as someone else's business, but this is my response to the chaos that is now in the country and those ecology problems that country have. And I do not care who will earn from this, because answering your questions whether tariff will go up on electricity, I will say no. And I will tell you why. Because this overall electrical generation in 2018 till 2022, in these 5 years, we should first construct all this. And this electric generation with green tariff, it can be 120 or 200 megawatts. And it is better for us to finance these 200 and resolve ecological problems than to finance those 200 megawatts through solar energy. The tariff is 2 times higher than for the utilization of waste. So we can calculate it very simply. So second, I would like to ask NGOs, dear friends. So here are no private interests. Let's propose the options how to resolve this problem at the state level. I would like to say that if we won't use the technology waste to energy, we won't solve the problem in our country. Answering your question, utilization and to lift this problem of waste is the first part. But we should think what to do with those 1.5 billion wastes that are stored in Ukraine. And concerning the structure, I would like to express my opinion. I have big experience, and I believe that as of today, we should have a waste processing plant near each oblast center. And oblasts and oblast centers, such as my native Vinnytsia, there are 460,000 population, and there should be sorting station in order to collect all the components, plastics, glass, paper, and what is left, organic part, will be transformed into energy, and what is not non-organic part, we will landfill it or will use another technology if we will have one. But at the level of region, in the regions, 180,000 investment in pyrolysis technology maybe won't be realized in the regions Kiev, Kharkiv, and maybe Odessa, big cities, Dnipro. There is a big industrial waste, and here there can be pyrolysis, incineration, and investment of 180 million, and also city authorities can provide some compensation, or they can find another instruments. And I would like to say once again, when we use electric energy, we pay small money, and there is a small part of green energy there, and we all pay for coal, we all pay for nuclear energy and for clear energy in each kilowatt, and then we will pay 0.01 of kopeck in order to solve this ecological utilization of wastes. And there is no other way for Ukraine in the next 5 years. If someone thinks that it can be a political discussion, and otherwise we won't resolve the problem. About the coefficient of solar energy, you said that it is 2 times higher. For utilization of wastes, we put a coefficient that is a little bit higher than green tariff for biogas and biomass. Why? Because if we are speaking about investment into the processing plant, this investment will be bigger than in the investment in biogas incineration and the investment into standard plant for biogas. In order to build the biogas plant, we should invest about €2.5 million for 1 megawatt, and we assess, these are my engineering calculations, that in order to build 1 megawatt for processing of waste. I asked you only about coefficients. We have 3 minutes. Maybe one more question from the audience. I am ready to pay more for clean environment than for pills. In continuation of previous question, Alexander, you said that we have bad ecology in our country, and we need to take decision. And do you believe that green tariff for waste incineration, this is green decision? We signed the association agreement with the EU, but you say that we need to follow example of Beijing. You know that when tourists come to Beijing, they wear masks because there is smoke. And if you want to introduce Chinese technology here in Ukraine, the ecology specialists are against this. So I would like to end my question. If you say about green tariffs for incineration of household waste, first of all, we need such solutions that would provide for clear environment and health. So there should be safe, clear environment. And the energy plant in Kiev, what they incinerate, how they do it, this is just killing for Kievans. And they say about pyrolysis method, this method for the household waste incineration is absent in Europe, and the representative of Poland now in Vinnytsia, and he's the deputy minister of Ecology of Poland, and he was shown what is proposed. So they have some small stations, and people call from Odessa, Kropivnitsky, and they say about pyrolysis installations, and they say that they do not have money for this. And do you want to introduce green tariffs for such businessmen? We don't have any controlling body that would supervise dioxins, furanes, and so these pseudo businessmen, they came to Lviv and Zakarpattia Oblast. They propose pyrolysis installations, and they try to convince our organization that they do not need purification for this installation. You've mentioned Spitlau plant. There are 4 stages of purification for emissions, and in our energy plant in Kiev, we do not any system for purification. So this green tariff is not timely, and we address to all the deputies to be loyal, not only to the citizens, but to each of the families, because children suffer from dioxins, and you can not buy health for any money. We have 1 minute, and then we will end our press conference. So I didn't say, and I can say that during the last 3 years, China invested in green energy more than EU and the US together. So I just said about the trend that is on the global market, especially in China, also influence on environment and our health, and the situation we face now is much bigger and worse than what you've said. I do not propose to support to those businessmen and those technologies you've mentioned categorically, and for me, incineration plant in Kiev, this is the obsolete technology. We should close it, and we should build a plant like in Vienna, and in order to do this, we should have proper instruments to cover expenses in order that it will be business and to get investment. Otherwise, we will continue to breathe the air we have, and we will be just covered with this waste and won't be able to do anything. So our time is up. Thank you very much. And I would like to say about coefficient. So approximately this is like solar energy, but this is not the case. So please open draft law, and you may see this information there, and I can promise to you, if you will provide proper substantiation, we can work, we can envisage a norm between first and second reading, how to introduce proper investment and modern technology in this area. And once again, we do not have the representative of the Ministry of Environment, but the adaptation of legislation. We have 3 directives that should be done through proper legislation, and in 3 or 4 months we will develop 1 more draft law that will fully implement the framework the framework directive. So you can speak off records further. Thank you.